Good morning, everyone who's entered this seminar. My name is Jessica Martinsson, and I am the leader of the SME platform at Europa Bio. And in my day job, I'm the CEO of the Swedish trade organization, Sweden Bio, and also a part of the Europa Bio board. It's my great pleasure to welcome our two speakers of this seminar. We have a very distinguished lineup, and I hope that this will be an interesting and very rewarding morning. So I would like to start by introducing Dana Burduja. Sorry for not maybe pronouncing your last name correctly, but I give you the chance to correct me later. But Dana is a health economist. She worked more than 25 years in the intersection of healthcare systems and public health policy and investments in life science. And right now she's leading a team responsible for evaluating and shaping the European Investment Bank's investments in life science. And previously to joining EIB, she's worked in several other similar organizations in public health, as the World Bank and UNICEF and USAID. I think she has a background as a medical doctor, and that combination brings a lot of clinical insights also into her policy expertise. Welcome Dana to this session. We will also be joined by Raphael Wolkensinger. I'm sorry for my German, really sorry about that. And that's
that was perfect.
Thank you. That's the other angle of the seminar, where we're having a representative from the company side. And Raphael is an entrepreneur working in the intersection of biology and food at the company Formo, that he will later introduce himself, which exploring how biotechnology can transform the way we produce food. And he has a background as within management and business, and he will cover also the parts on how smaller companies get access to funding. So with that short introduction, I would like to give the floor to Dana and give a little introduction about what's the offering from the European Investment Bank.
Thank you very much, Jessica. If you don't mind, I'll probably share some slides in the presentation. And okay, I hope everyone can see them.
Looks perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, from me and from our director, Felicitas Riddles, the Director of Innovation and Competitiveness Department here at the EIB. In brief, what I will try to give a flavor of today is what is this about the EIB group, the EIB, and how we together, the two institutions, particularly on the EIB front, support the investments in life sciences and health, with a particular focus on life sciences today. Not very many people know that the EIB group combines the EIB, the EU's long-standing lending arm, with the EIF, European Investment Fund, European Investment Bank and European Investment Fund, making together the European Investment Bank group. While the EIB is the lending arm, the EIF specializes in risk finance for SMEs and funds of funds. And together, we provide substantial financial support across Europe, including in health and biotechnology, and even beyond this. Getting back to the EIB, we are one of the world's major multilateral lenders, focus on improving lives inside and beyond European Union. While our shareholders are the EU member states, our reach covers Europe and beyond. We prioritize climate investment, social impact, and innovation, and we'll know more about the strategic priorities later. In terms of the numbers, I mean, they're quite big. As you have them on the slides, I will just make the point about us investing from the European Investment Bank last year, 100 billion in lending and around 800 million in investments by the European Investment Fund. Added up during the years, this gives you an overview like the one that is on the slide. We're also extremely present all over the world with more than 60 offices. Obviously, they cannot all be within the 27 European states, but also we have more than 4,200 staff. The particularity being that we have people like me and my team of about 21 people that are dedicated sector experts doing the in-house due diligence, implementation, support, and monitoring of our projects. I said that we will get back to the priorities, and they range from climate action to digitalization, strategic autonomy, cohesion, health. And these are the priorities that guide our investments. And when we invest, we try to invest and support the entire ecosystem, not only individual companies or businesses. You can see on the screen that some of them are quite recent. Security and defense is not something that we used to do, while others have been at the core of the EIB business since the 1958 start of the activity, like the social infrastructure, agriculture, and bioeconomy. And without further ado, we're moving into the narrow window. If you remember from the previous slide when we said Tech EU, digitalization and technological innovation, we're moving in closer to the scope of today. And I bring the EU Biotech Act in the context of the conversation as, again, European Investment Bank, it's owned by the member states. It's a policy taker, supporting the implementation of the European Union policies as their investment arms. We've been actively contributing to the EU Biotech Act as we are the ones that know the market best and where the needs are, as we have a history of at least 10 years of investing in life sciences and an extremely large pool of former and current clients. And we think it's extremely relevant that their views and needs are covered properly by the Biotech Act. I think it's clear that the Biotech EU Act is focusing on the competitiveness in biotechnology. And this has a strong research, innovation, and development angle, but also has an angle that refers to the retaining of this innovation in Europe and the scale up of this innovative products and companies and their exit ways within the European context. There are several angles to the EU Biotech Act, and the one where we, of course, can contribute most as the European Investment Bank Group in general is the funding for the biotech projects. And this brings me back to what we defined in-house as Biotech EU program internal in the bank as part of the larger Tech EU initiative that we have. And this is focusing on research, innovation, clinical development, digitalization, and stronger supply chains. And it's the backbone, we hope, to the future biotech investment platform as it is presented in the Biotech Act, as we've been requested by the Commission to contribute to the creation of this platform. The idea is that with this platform, at least in the next 2 years, we'll invest about 3 billion euros from the EIB Group resources, and that will end up catalyzing investments of about 10 billion, as we have a clear role in stimulating and supporting the market, but not replacing the commercial partners, the venture capital funds that are there. It's just to catalyze and stimulate investments, particularly where risk is higher. And then maybe in the context of this overview of who we are and where we sit in the policy context, in the investment context, what do we do? I mean, what did we do to date and what do we do now in the context of the current landscape? Our activity covers therapeutic innovation, medical technologies, digital health. What we have a bit of let's say definitions issue. So in the context of today's presentation and our activities, when I say life sciences, I talk about therapeutics, medical technologies, and digital health covered by the life sciences word. While we do have a larger biotech reach together with our colleagues from biotechnologies and agriculture, for the presentation today, I focused on the life sciences sector as we understand it. The current market trends are probably no surprise to anyone that is in the room. And I think while you have some of them on the slide, I think the focus is on advanced therapies and diagnostics, digital medicines, and AI-enabled technologies. And when I say technologies, I particularly include here drug development, but not only. So these are the newer things, they're not new, just to be very clear. But again, once again, we focus where the market fails, either that is too risky, it's at the beginning, or other type of risks are too high for us to take. So again, highlighting on the climate change health effects, that is not something that it's yet mainstream, but I think will come. But while we started looking at it with scientific evidence, we see also more and more partners from the private sector involved in this type of activities. Again, coming back to the market trends, there are opportunities and threats, and what our role is as the IB is to transform those threats into opportunities with the financial support that we can bring, but also with other type of support that we can offer, because we have advisory support, we have the policy support, and last but not least, we have a catalytic role. So our presence, because of the quality of our due diligence, because of the reputation we have already on the market in this space, it's able to crowd in other private investors. Again, while the opportunities are probably clear for most of us, I would probably just look at the threats and also highlight that for some of these threats, the solution is not in the financing. I don't think it's something new for most of you, but just to highlight that changing, for example, the regulatory environment is not something that comes from the financing, comes from our policy-related bodies. And again, the pressure on social expenditure and the decreasing reimbursement prices. It's, again, not us as a financial institution that are able to propose solutions, but we're able to reflect the risks that these bring to the table, as most of our companies are facing the same challenges. And then moving on to the next one. These are, again, a few numbers. I will stick to the life sciences numbers in context. As Jessica kindly introduced me. I'm heading the Life Sciences and Health Division. So everything related to health is supported by our team in terms of due diligence, implementation support, monitoring, and any other related activity. But the life sciences part of it, it's usually around 1 billion euro of investments yearly, with these volumes going up as we also go out more towards the corporate clients and not only the innovative clients. And this is, as we will see later, reaching out to, let's say, in the last 5 years, close to 150 companies from the private sector in the space of life sciences. What I also want to highlight is the indicators that we reflect on our activity. And this is people lose access to better health services, for example. It's the impact that we're looking after. It's our political mission given by the member states, and it's not the profit driven, as we are a not-for-profit institution, a public institution, but also AAA rated. So that puts us in a position where we can really have impact with our financing. In terms of what we finance in the life sciences space, I've already alluded to it, but we finance projects across the full innovation chain: research and development, clinical development, regulatory, digitalization, market access, and including infrastructure. As I've already maybe alluded to, more recently, we moved our support into anchoring business in Europe, including corporate and acquisition finance in the space of life sciences, but not only. And for companies seeking EIB support, we look for a few things: strong innovation, unmet medical need, proof of concept, market potential, and the teams, the governance team, the technical team, and how this translates into a credible growth strategy. This is something that we look at carefully. That's why maybe you heard of us as a bit slow on the market, which is not true. We're just very thorough. But again, the advantage being that we can work with the companies to shape some of their growth plans into financial conditions that will then open the doors for others, financiers at the table. We do not finance 100% of what we consider the project cost, the investment cost. We only finance 50% of it. And we come in the picture in general between the first and the second round of capital raising. So there is always the companies and another investor's skin in the game, trying to reduce the risk in order to be able to provide the needed financing. We focus now on the venture debt because the venture debt first addresses one of the death valleys of our investors, and secondly, we became, during the last 5 years, the biggest provider of venture debt capital for life sciences companies in Europe. And that is extremely important because it allows us to customize this financial product to the company's growth plan, and also without diluting the capital there. It's an instrument that we developed together with our banking colleagues during the years, refined with the market trends, refined with the policy areas, but it still is the most important instrument we use. And just to put things in context, venture debt, you can see it, it's in the middle, and it's an instrument deployed by the European Investment Bank. Nevertheless, this is a slide to show you that we have a multitude of other financial instruments in support of including life sciences innovative projects. And the institutions that are linked to our financing, they're always the European Investment Fund as part of the group, but then the Commission and the European Innovation Council, particularly for startups. What I want to bring up here when we see the European Commission logo is that we can take this particular list with the venture debt instruments and others, but particularly with this one, exactly because we have the backup from the Commission. And when I say the backup, I'm not saying the backup, I'm saying a guarantee. And that's what puts us in a particular position as on or our own resources, while we will be able to deploy the same with the same instrument, the volume and the extent of this deployment will be completely different. So we're partners in this, and we're very proud of it. Again, just a visual about the company's cycle and the products that we can offer. And when we say equity and quasi-equity, that's where we refer to our venture debt project, which is a quasi-equity, obviously. That's just a simple one to put things in context. You see that probably the quasi-equity, the venture debt product, is on the gray and light blue areas of intervention, but we can come up during the company cycle the same or different other companies, depending on their needs, with different other products. Then just going straight to what the venture debt offers. It offers flexible long-term financing to innovative startups and scale-ups, complementing equity while limiting dilution. I cannot insist more on this one. It targets companies with strong technology, robust business models, and backing from professional investors, where, again, I cannot repeat more than enough, the teams that are leading on the governance, management, and technical side are thoroughly evaluated, and they always make a significant difference in the quality of the projects that we finance. For the time being, under particularly the Tech EU, Biotech EU umbrella, investments to be financed by the EIB with this instrument need to be based in European Union, Norway, or Iceland, due to the guarantees we have from the Commission. But on the other hand, we have developed other instruments that target companies outside of the European Union, particularly trying to create a stable ecosystem of technology transfer in terms of life sciences from Europe to low and middle income countries, like a particular focus on Africa. I don't need to retell anyone the COVID-19 vaccine story about the inability of some countries to access some of the most innovative products. And I think one of the best examples I can bring here is Biotech, that got the financing from us and from the European Commission to deploy their technology in Rwanda. So I think it's getting more and more relevant for European companies to be able to deploy their solutions. Again, the challenges of the companies that are going through this longer and deeper valley of death in the life sciences space can be addressed by the venture debt instrument. It has long-term patient capital. It has our in-house specialized due diligence. Again, the people from my team will join the bankers and define together with the company's management the milestones for this financing. We can commit sufficient ticket sizes, and hopefully with the next MFF, we can even go more and more into the scale-up dimension of it. There is lower dilution to funders and investors. There is a grace period. There are enough characteristics of this type of financing to make it attractive for the company moving from, let's say, clinical development to the registration and commercialization of the product. We have a gradual de-risking strategy with different tranches and intermediary disbursement milestones, and these disbursement milestones are directly related with the development of the product that stays at the heart of the financing that we're offering. Again, I leave most of the aspects to speak for herself. I'm just trying to highlight what is more relevant for us. How does it go in practice? You can see I'm reaching the end of it, and I see Jessica already giving me the look. So we constantly do screening. We talk to the business community. If some of you are online, please feel free to say good things or not so good things about us. We have company presentations, we have first contact calls, we have compliance check, and we have high-level financial discussions. If the company is in the right place at the right time with their product and strategy, we go to due diligence, and if there is a need for our financing, let's be clear, that can take up from 3 to 5 months. Again, not a financial due diligence, but a full due diligence, including the product and the sector. And then we have legal negotiations of the terms of the financing. We do a yearly monitoring of the project in general. And sometimes we need to intervene in the restructuring of our loan or the project, as some of the companies, as we were operating in a high-risk area, will have challenges on the way. These are the companies more or less supported by our venture debt instrument in Europe. You might see that it's not only life sciences, that's clean tech, that's deep tech, that's artificial intelligence. All the innovative industries can benefit from this instrument. Out of these, it's roughly 3 billion euros and probably 135, 150 companies that we supported to date with our venture debt instrument. I'll probably stop here and just making a final point on this guarantees that we receive from the Commission, and you might say what security and defense has to do with the life sciences sector. Out of the general guarantee from the Commission, we have a dedicated window that is supporting HERA, the agency of the Commission, InvestEU projects. And for example, we have a company in France that developed monoclonal antibodies to find against biological threats, exclusively biological threats. So that it's not something that can turn into a biological threat. And they benefited from the guarantee, from the loan under the guarantee from this specific window. So we can design the windows at the level of the mandate. We can design the product where it sits in-house, and then in the end, we can also stay with the company and adapt the instrument to the needs of the company. Thank you very much. Looking forward for your questions or comments.
Thank you for this nice overview of what you are offering. Now I would like to also invite our panelists to the discussion. Rafael, maybe you can start by giving a short introduction of your company and why we have picked you to be a part of this panel and what you bring to the table.
Why you guys pick me is probably more a question for you guys. So I'll try to
I think you know what value you might have to the seminar.
Well, thank you, Jessica. So I'll keep it as quick and short as possible to leave as much room for the participants to ask questions. So very quickly, I'm the founder and CEO of Formo. We're a Germany based biotech company in white biotech. So we're not in life science, we're not in red biotech. We are producing animal-free proteins, milk proteins, first and foremost casein proteins for food applications, ranging from classic dairy products, but also into nutritional products, performance and wellness products. Doing that without the cow, so engineering microorganisms to produce those proteins through fermentation, scaling up that fermentation and bringing this to market. We've been around since late 2018, early 2019. We have raised a bit more than 100 million euros in equity so far. So we raised our Series B in 2024. So we're now at Series C or pre-Series C stage. Mostly financed through equity in private markets. However, there's also a couple of public grants, non-dilutive funding that we tapped into. Also, at some point had a venture debt loan granted by the EIB, which we then decided not to tap into for certain strategic reasons. But overall, also had some touch points with the EIB there. And yeah, I think that's it. I can, like, any questions with regards to the financing journey, specifically in white biotech. I know Dana has spoken a lot to health, life science and red biotech. Not my core expertise, but everything around agriculture, food, materials, cosmetics, etc. I think is probably more my core expertise.
But I think maybe we can start discussion with the more in-depth of your experience of fundraising, Rafael. What was the biggest hurdles? What was the round that was the most challenging? And how do you see that the landscape has changed in Europe over time?
Yeah, it's hard to say. Every round is different. I would definitely say that. So we raised our pre-seed round in early 2019 and then seed round in late 2019. Then we had some financing in between, raised a bigger Series A in 2021 and then the Series B in 2024. So over that time span, I've definitely seen how the private markets have changed. I think for what we are doing, biotech in food specifically, alternative proteins, synthetic biology, agriculture, etc. 2020, 2021 have obviously been years with a lot of investment volume and frequency, which is why also rounds were typically a bit quicker in terms of due diligence, because it was very much a startup led kind of environment. Whereas now, as it has cooled down a bit, obviously due diligence cycles are longer, more scrutiny definitely in terms of market validation, scientific and technical validation, etc. So every round is a bit different. I couldn't say like which one was the hardest as such. They're just all different. Also, I think as a founding team and management team, you grow over the rounds. Probably, emotionally for me, the first round was the biggest just because I've never done it before. Even though obviously the volume was much smaller. But definitely what we see is that the environment in our space has cooled down. I'm not sure if that holds true for red biotech or life science, probably not to that extent, I'd say. And maybe, kind of tapping into the conversation that we're having here, I think one of the things that all the founders, if current founders or future founders are in the participants here, one of the things that I would definitely ask myself, or a question that I would give everybody on this journey is, think about the balance and the mix of private money and public money that you want to go for and what really makes sense for your startup. Knowing that, institutions like EIB, who do a tremendous job, not replacing private capital, right, but basically having like a complementary job. They work on different timelines. They have a political mandate. They don't have an investment mandate, or a profit mandate as such. So it's different stakeholders. So I think, be mindful of how much money you need. First question I would always ask is, do you even need money at all? External capital in biotech, I would usually say yes. But obviously that would be the first question. And then ask a lot of other founders what their experience was in terms of, private capital and public capital.
When I speak about getting your company funded, I usually always bring up the opportunity of actual invoicing. At what time point during your journey have you started to really approach the market, Rafael?
Can you repeat that, Jessica? Like, what do you mean exactly by invoicing?
No, but I mean, a lot of the very research-based companies tend to forget that they also need to address a paying customer in the end. and it's more of a focus in getting in contact with investors. But how have you combined that kind of end customer and investor?
In early days, science was not the risk, and that was kind of the focus. Obviously, we started with like a major market demand, which for us was very clear. It was like, okay, end consumers want to tap into more sustainable food choices. There's obviously also political requirements that companies start to decarbonize their value chain, their production. And so it was very clear that, you know, looking at all the mega trends, right? I mean, more focus on health and wellness for end consumers, sustainability, in all of its forms, resilience, kind of that all taps into kind of, okay, we need to be able to basically create a system that is not entirely dependent on animals, and we need to offer, you know, an alternative. So early days, kind of the demand or the goal was very clear and like very crisp or specific, tangible market interactions with customers who put on a contract and say like, hey, the moment you hit that milestones, I'm going to pay you $20 million. That was not required. But the more we scale, the more we mature, the less the question from investors is, you know, does the science work or does the technology work? The more the question is like, okay, but show me, where are the offtakes? You know, where are the clear contracts? Nevertheless, I would still, you know, my advice to any early stage a company would still be try to speak with customers as early and as frequently as possible. Maybe focus more on that than actually building a business plan that, you know, in early days. I just think like these business plans that a lot of people are doing early days with a time horizon of, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 years with profit and loss statement, they just rubbish. So don't focus your time on that. Focus your time on interacting with customers.
I think that was a very good advice. Thank you for that. Turning to you, Dana, how do you see the life science and biotech industry being different apart from other industries that the EIB are supporting? Did we lose Dana? Are you with us?
Looks like we lost her.
Dana, can you hear us?
Yes, now I can.
Yes, perfect, good.
I didn't know if it's at my end or...
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't matter. I was just asking you, how do you look at biotech and life science industry in comparison to the other industries that you are supporting in terms of risk?
Yes, thank you very much. And just to say before jumping to the answer that it was so refreshing, Raphael, to hear you speaking from the company perspective. And it's always a lesson learned in every of the due diligence that we make because, while certain things are general, it's always extremely rich exchange with the company and the issues they face. And going back to life sciences and what is different, I think there are two main differences as compared to other sectors. Some of them will have one or of the other, but no other sector will have probably the two. We're talking about life sciences and we're talking mostly about human health. So everything is extremely highly regulated, which is good because it gives you a clear path of what you need to do to go with your innovation to the market, which is extremely costly. If only I look at the last phase, which is, let's say, the clinical trials, it's extremely costly and with a 50-60% chance to succeed. So it's from the outset something that raised the risk level. And this is one aspect. And this applies mostly to the launch of the product, early growth companies that need to make it from an excellent, successful technology brought to this phase, then to the clinical trials and to the market. When I look at mostly at the scale-up phase, but also having in mind the early stage companies, it's also, going back to Raphael, who the client is. In most of the cases, the big client is the public sector, because you cannot invent a technology that is extremely revolutionary in the cell and gene therapy areas that costs 250,000 euros an application, and imagine that you address this exclusively to the private sector. It needs to have an uptake from the public sector. And again, we all know what the pressure is on the health costs, on the public sector, on the aging population. The costs are constantly increasing, and that means the public sector needs to take decision, and hence moving more and more towards supporting innovative products on the market that have a high cost initially, but that save a lot in the costs of healthcare after, and with a high impact demonstrated in terms of efficacy and efficiency for certain areas. So I would say that these two aspects, the highly regulated environment, both in terms of registration of product, but also both in terms of reimbursement, makes this sector double prone to again, riskier investments.
I fully agree. And what maybe this is a question for both of you. How can both actors as EIB and also companies try to describe these challenges, but also the high reward in a more appealing way to investors? We feel that this is an industry that is being seen as very difficult to manage as an investor. Is there anything that EIB can do to help other investors to guide in finding the right nuggets in the great pool that we have in Europe?
Yes, I can think of at least two directions here at the EIB. One is that, again, we can offer to companies advisory services. And advisory is not only in terms of how to raise more financing, but it's also in terms of how to structure their business plan and aim for certain reimbursement levels, not particularly focused on this, but it can be taking the company in this direction. We also can do our work and talk to our partners in the policy area, which is the European Commission, not so much the national governments, but still where we can bring these issues to the table, like we did in the conversations for the drafting of the Biotech Act, where we are able to share some of these concerns. And I think these two directions are important. And I think also the life made our job easier from this point of view after the COVID-19 pandemic. We are early financing agency of BioNTech long before they rerouted their investments into looking into the vaccine, but when they were looking more into the oncology sector. So I think that was a crash course on why investing in health matter, but unfortunately, I think this now competes with why investing in economic stability matters, why investing in security and defense matter, and it's becoming highly more competitive in terms of getting the interest. So we just need to make a stronger case, and we're here to support the companies doing this too.
A very practical question that came in from the audience to Rafael, where one of our attendants would like to know more about how you searched for different investors, what tools you were using, or any particular network that you engaged in.
Yeah, I already tried to answer that in the chat as well to Susanna, right? So really depends. So where to look for investors? Sure, like there's lots of lists online, whether it is, depending on the space you're in, obviously, but very specific networks, or also opinion leader on LinkedIn, usually, that are kind of in between VC and startups, that post lists like biggest deep tech investors in Europe, seed investors in Europe, etc. There's lots of lists online. So I think if you do some bench research, you will find a good selection. And then you go through the list and you basically go to the website of the VCs and you check out what have they invested in. Is it a good fit in terms of stage, in terms of industry, in terms of, what they're trying to achieve, fund size, etc. Are they currently actively investing? Maybe speak to some of the startups they have invested in, if you can. What I would always say is reach out to other founders in your or in adjacent industries and ask them, and ask them like, who do you think are the three best investors you know, or the three best investors who have invested in your company? And so build up like a list of references, pitch to these founders as well, because usually what I find, lots of other founders are very generous with their time because they know how hard the journey is, and so they will try to support fellow founders. So try to speak to as many people as possible, ask them what their advice would be. And then build your list from there. And in terms of hit ratio, really entirely depends on the dynamics of a certain round. In probably like the hottest deals are, you don't even have to talk to anybody, right? If your company is, and what you're doing is so hot and there's so much dynamics, let's say in the space, or because of your profile, or because someone who's really tapped into the ecosystem thinks that you're great and your company's great, and has already kind of back channeled to some of the leading investors in the space, it might be that you're not even raising, and all of a sudden someone knocks on your door and says like, hey, can we lead your seed round, even though you're not even actively raising, right? So that's the best case example. Right now we're living, and maybe currently happening, first and foremost in AI. Right now we're living in an ecosystem that maybe is not as easy to raise. So then, it can be anywhere from speak to 100 and get one, to speak to 50 and get five. Like I would say this is a healthy range somewhere, but you need to find out. It's really, there's no general rule at the end of the day.
But I also saw that you commented in the chat that your advice is also to reach outside of the European borders. How do you see the other markets and regions? Where would you direct people now looking for investments?
It really depends on the industry. Again, like, is it red biotech, or is it industrial biotech, white biotech? But a general rule, I think it definitely doesn't hurt you to diversify your cap table as early as seed, definitely Series A. So don't only get European investors on board. We brought on some people out of Hong Kong, out of Japan, out of the US, just so you also geographically diversify, because right now you can even tell, like when you go to the US versus Europe, it's a different climate. If you go to Asia, it's a different climate. And also specifically in geopolitically important industries such as biotech, a government initiative can make or break the interest from certain investors into that space, right? If Singapore says we want to reduce our food imports in the next 10 years by 50%, then VC investors in Singapore will be bullish on anything food related, right? So this is just one example. So go beyond Europe. I think there is a lot of good things happening in Europe. I'd love to see them happening much faster. Of course, I'm an entrepreneur. I would, there's when we're in Brussels, or when we, speak to the government in Germany, all across Europe, basically, I think we start to wake up and start to realize that we need to be faster. We need to be more bullish. We need to be independent and resilient. And that also shows, in the initiatives that we have, in the type of investment that we have. However, in some industries, it might be even too little too late, because then companies just go somewhere else. So I'd like to see Europe even bullisher. So I would say, if you're currently in one of these industries, definitely make use of that dynamism that is happening in Europe, and that wake up that is happening in Europe, but don't rely entirely on it. So travel to other places, travel to the Middle East, to Asia, speak to investors, speak to government players, US as well. So yeah, diversify, go outside of Europe.
Dana, do you have a comment on that? How do you respond to Raphael's point on looking at around the world?
I think there are two dimensions to it. I tend to agree to Raphael that some things we need to understand that can be done equally good, or even better outside of the EU. I think, coming back from the life sciences perspective, I think that's where we can make a significant difference in trying to remain champions, because at the level of fundamental research, we're still a leading force as Europe. But when it comes to the next stages of clinical trial, commercialization, that's where particularly companies that try to scale up find easier exits in the US or in Asia. And I think that's the role of this biotech investment platform, to try to bring together more of the financing sources, because they exist, but they're probably not tapped into in a structured way. I think that's why it's important to also have, and I think Rafael mentioned he wants some things faster. I think we can also do some things better in terms of regulatory. I mean, when you take China or US and we compare it with the EU, but we compare one single market with 27 markets, at least from the life sciences point of view, where we have such specific national regulatory aspects still in place, including pricing and reimbursement. So I think we are champions in fundamental research. There is still room to improve in terms of development phase and scale-up phase. And I think that's where we should focus. Keep up with the investments in the fundamental research area, but then focus our investments in these other two. And I think, at least at the policy level, the Commission is taking some of the right steps in the right direction. We have a Critical Medicines Act, for example. So again, going back to Rafael, not on everything, but on certain things, we need to keep our strategic autonomy. And in other things, we need to become, a hub for more investments and more localization of these businesses in Europe. But indeed, we live in a global world. We cannot ignore this. I mean, it's clear.
I have a little bit of a provocative question for both of you. One thing that you often hear, that Europe is not good enough to really kill your darlings and really add a lot of money on those who really have the opportunity to make it. What's your view on that? Do we need to be tougher and accept that we have an attrition and the companies would be allowed to fail?
For sure. 100%. We need to be, I wouldn't even say tougher. I would just say, like, we need to be more bullish. We need to be bolder. We need to be faster, because reality of venture capital and a lot of the industries we're talking about that are really kind of critical, right? Semiconductors, AI, robotics, biotech, fusion reactors, energy, etc. Like all those industries, at a certain point, kind of, they also become somewhat a game geopolitically in terms of competition with other areas in the world. They become a question of speed, and speed, in many instances is a question of capital. So I think Europe in general, the mindset here is that, we'd rather focus on not losing big bets than making big bets. But reality of venture capital is really, it's a power law game, right? That's why the Americans play it so well, arguably. Sure, for example, for the EIB might be a bit different, because it's a public institution with a political mandate. Of course, there's also some PR and communications that needs to be done towards European citizens, because ultimately you need to justify where taxpayers' money goes. And I think specifically in that setup, it's super hard to then say, like, well, sorry, 300 million gone. Well, we tried. But overall, that's what we need, because in these industries, critical capital and speed will matter. And we already see it. I mean, I would argue maybe 3 out of 6 industries are already lost, regardless of how much we invest right now, just because the competitive edge that other areas have built over Europe is so massive that Europe practically doesn't have, a real future in those industries, I think. So yeah, we need to be bullisher. We need to be tougher, definitely. Let the Walking Dead die and focus on the ones that actually have a chance globally.
Dana, how do you support companies in this?
Yes, thank you. Like Rafael already alluded, we're in a slightly different position as a public institution, but that's why we have the political agreement with the Commission to work under their guarantees, so we can also fail and fail together with the ones that need to fail. So it's not like we don't do. But as we're not venture capitalists, as our main product is venture debt or loans, we have a slightly different approach. And as I've insisted during my presentation, we come with the quality stamp. So this quality stamp that takes slightly longer makes the others, the venture capitalists, come with their financing faster, as they've already have the proof of a due diligence done on the matter. So we're catalytic for sure. And when we need to, if we look at the European Innovation Council investments, they are operated by the European Investment Bank. So they've been delegated by the Commission to us. And there we can be faster and we can operate on different principles as it is grant money. So we do a closer to the VC type of due diligence and within absolutely normal times. And yes, I fully agree that the more risk you take, the more chances are that some will disappear from the landscape, and we just try to anticipate as best as possible and even rescue the ones that can still be rescued, let's say, through our financial conditions and the way that we can restructure our investment under the venture debt, and through the milestones that we put in there, we protect to have the full risk just at the end.
And maybe to make that clear, Donna, I wasn't specifically referring to the EIB in terms of we got to be bullisher and bigger, etc. I'm talking about the whole ecosystem, right? Local public grants, like with insane requirements in terms of diligence and getting grants at like pre-seed stage. Write me a business plan of 5 years. Nobody cares. Nobody would ever ask that, right? If you look at national regulation of like, you need to go to the notary, you cannot start companies digitally, like all the things around employment incentive schemes, all the things around. And obviously now, hopefully it's coming with the EU Inc., right? That we don't have a standardized kind of legal form for companies, like all of these things, that universities or professors are performance is based on how much they publish and not how much patents they write or how much companies they spin off. Like it's a whole ecosystem. So I'm not referring to the EIB here with speed and bullishness. I'm just saying it's the whole ecosystem that needs to be quicker, faster, bullisher, bolder if we want to play a role in the global competition. And maybe we don't, that's also fine, but that's up to Europe to decide, I guess, if we don't want to.
I think hasn't Europe really unified in the sentiment that we need to tackle these issues in order to not get overrun by Asia and the US? And we are starting to reach the end of this hour. Please, the Europa Bio team, if there is some questions in the chat that you really think we should lift, please let me know. Otherwise, I just have like one final question that I would just like you to answer really briefly. So what's the single most important improvement that we need to tackle right now to get Europe up to speed and really, really being competitive?
I mean, I can start with a quote from our president, and it's not because he's our president, but because I'm a strong believer. I think we need to see one European market, including one capital market union. That's extremely important, and that's where you can compete with the likes of Asia and the US. And every single step that we take in this direction, be it at regulatory, pricing, financing aspects, I think it's a significant improvement. So regulatory, financing, pricing, as far as life sciences is concerned, but all under the umbrella of reaching towards that capital market union that will really reinforce the let's say, financing ecosystem, but not only. Thank you.
What do you think, Rafael?
Would have been my answer as well. One market, that's definitely the most important one. I'll add one more, and this would be to become truly independent in our thinking from the Americans, from the Russians, from the Chinese, just like, by mindset. And being independent doesn't mean being hostile, not at all, like collaborate, sure. But also understand that we need to own the crucial technologies of the future. Otherwise, I think we'll face a really, really tough century here in Europe.
Cannot agree more on this one, Rafael. Thank you.
I think this was a very strong message from both of you to wrap up this session. So it's very clear that we're going to do Europe first, or make Europe great again. And I hope that we all can take part in that journey. At least I try to do that in my professional role, and trying to support small enterprises all around Europe. So with that, I would like to thank you for your participation. Also thank you for the audience and a very active chat. Thank you. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Bye.